Jyotsna, who's there with me as well. Jyotsna, as far as the procedures are concerned going forward, what would the church be carrying forward going next?
Right, and as mentioned by our guest now, Scott Lucas, he of course did mention a traditional procedures. So these are, I'll just read out some of the procedures that is usually carried out. Now, following the death of Pope Francis, as it's said that we're taking a look at the process of electing a new pope. Now, it happens no less than 15 days and no more than 20 days after a pope's death, and sees the College of Cardinals gather. Now, the election is conducted in conditions of secrecy, and the cardinals are shut away in the Vatican until they reach agreement. Now, usually the college has a limit of 120 on voting age cardinals. Now, in 2007, let's just look past at what happened. Pope Benedict passed a decree which stated that cardinals needed to reach a 2/3 majority, and the election process can take days, and the cardinals are not allowed to have contact with the outside world during the period. So, of course, as I mentioned, it happens no less than 15 days and no more than 20 days. So we'll have to wait and see, but this is how the procedures goes. We have a number of cardinals who go into the church, they stay there, not interact with the world, and look up to the next leader.
Thanks, Jyotsna, for getting us. I'll come back to you in a bit. Scott, as far as what the Pope inherited when Pope Francis, what he inherited when he took to the church, he took on a lot of burden when he took his position years ago. But, he inherited a church which was under attack from a major scandal which was going on. There was a lot of infighting as well, which several reports have suggested. As of now, when he leaves, now that he will depart, what is he leaving for the next Pope to inherit from him?
Well, first, I think remember how significant it was when he became Pope in 2013. In that you had a church which, as you mentioned, had been rocked for years by the scandals, especially over pedophilia, let's call it what it was, between members of the clergy and children. It had been rocked by the cover-up of those cases. But beyond that, it was a sign of a changing church, because remember, he is the first pope to come from Latin America. He's from Argentina. So it was a sign of a more global Catholicism. In terms of what he leaves behind 12 years later, I think in part that idea of the global Catholicism and the idea that, it is not just European, as many people had thought of it, that is firmly entrenched there. I think, as we've discussed, the idea that he has put out there that the church does not have to remain silent on key issues is out there. But I would say that there's one particular issue, and remember, I'm speaking from Ireland, where we also were rocked by scandals about the church and about pedophilia. I think his reticence in calling that out, his relative silence in terms of talking about what the church had gone through, at least in Ireland, and I think in some other countries, some people do wish that he had actually been more forthright in terms of what the church had gone through. I can understand that in his perspective, he may not have wanted to talk about it too often because the church was trying to heal. You were trying to move past what happened. But in a sense, some people were saying you can't move past what happened. And it'll be interesting to see if his successor is a bit more open in acknowledging what the church has gone through and tries to build on Pope Francis's legacy in other areas while he does that.
Scott, as far as the Pope is concerned, he did face a lot of internal dissent through the years of his papacy. He of course was very well known across the world. His popularity had really expanded through the course of his trips overseas, and all his thoughts on migrants, on interfaith dialogue and peace. Do you feel that had really caused friction?
It has caused some friction. Now, again, I have to emphasize the positive side of this in a way that if you think about, if you can go back to when I was much younger, that the era of Pope John Paul II, who also quite well traveled, who tried to present a changing church. And in some ways, Pope Benedict had rolled back on that. Well, Francis revived that idea of the outreach, the global outreach of the church. But he has received pushback on that, and I would look at pushback from one specific area, which is from my native country, the United States. There were certain leaders like Cardinal Raymond Burke, who were very critical of the Pope and who allied with the Australian Cardinal George Pell to say that the Pope had been a negative influence. Conservative Catholics are becoming a much more powerful political force in the United States right now. They were very significant in Donald Trump's election last November. You're showing the shots of J.D. Vance there, a sign of that Trump election. And whether those conservative Catholics in the United States will take what you call friction and be more vocal in their dissent with the church, as well as being much more vocal in terms of U.S. politics, that's something to watch in the weeks and months to come.
Scott, thanks so much. But stay with me. I'd like to now cut across to Valentina De Donato, who is a reporter from Tuscany, Italy. She's joining me from Tuscany. Valentina, as far as the reports are concerned, of course, we've heard what the Vatican has told us. This is the Pope was in bad condition since several weeks, February more so than before, and February onwards, I would say. As of now, what happens next, and what more can you share with us?
Yes, that's right. For the past over 1 month, the Pope was hospitalized for a double pneumonia. He has, and just this morning, the Vatican confirmed that the pontiff has died at 88 years old after battling with years of health issues. But the last month was quite critical. Which, just yesterday when we saw the Pope at the Vatican, even his speaking was very worn down, and people, and he had seen Vice President J.D. Vance, and just today, the announcement of his passing has happened, which was, for some people, a bit expected, but of course the timing was shocking. It's always shocking when a pontiff dies. So the next steps will be, there's about 15-20 days where there is sort of a grace period, and then the conclave begins. The conclave is when the cardinals get together at the Vatican, and the voting begins for who will be the next pontiff. Of course, one of the biggest things that Pope Francis has become known for is his mission to change the perception of the Catholic Church around the world. He is quite open-minded, quite progressive, which has, for some who believe in other more conservative values, has been part of a rift within the Church. So many now wonder, will we be getting a continuation of Pope Francis with his ideological alignment, with an open church, open to migration, something he just spoke about the other day, for instance, something that's very much against what maybe more conservative Catholics are now pushing, just like Vice President J.D. Vance in the Trump administration, for instance. So could that open up to a more conservative Catholic alignment? Many people don't know where it will go, and it's hard to know ahead of a conclave exactly who would be the next pope.
Yes. Valentina, we've heard a lot of reactions coming in from world leaders at this point, and as if anyone studies the Pope's life, we know that he did cause a certain level of friction with his thoughts. Some people agreed with it, some people loved him for it, and then there were those who questioned it gravely. At this point, what kind of reactions are you picking up? Are people mostly just paying tribute to his life, or do you find, have you picked up some other reactions as well?
I think in this case, and in all initial cases of the passing of a pope,
Absolutely.
The initial is shock, the initial is grief. I think, of course, there's unity in that. Nobody is happy at the passing of a pope. And of course, Pope Francis uniquely was able to garner a lot of excitement. He did, since the beginning of his pontiff in 2013, he invigorated the church. And I think that was one of the choices of the cardinals back when they voted for him, was to have Pope Francis, because he was able to excite people, a new generation of people for the church. Many of the reasons for his humanitarian causes, his plight, his hope for helping who is the least seen, that was always very much part of his pontiff. If you think his first trip as Pope in 2013 was to Lampedusa, and his thought on that was to show and remember the most forgotten people, the migrants. That was always in line with who he was. And even before he became Pope, back when he was a cardinal and a priest in Argentina, as a Jesuit, he was always going where the most forgotten people were. So it was very much in line with who he was and who his pontiff is, and where I think the Catholic Church was going under his leadership.
As far as the funeral is concerned now, Valentina, what would the procession look like, and in how much time would one start seeing visuals of that, or what has the church planned next?
So the church has everything quite planned and organized for a funeral. In the next few days, there's going to be, for the next 15, 20 days, there's a bit of fanfare, and then after that, there is going to be the beginning of the conclave. Just a few years back, where there was Pope Benedict had the funeral, and there was an open casket, and people were able to go in and see the Pope, his body in the church. And so that is something that is very much aligned with what the church does. Yeah. Of course, Pope Benedict created less of an attraction with Pope Francis, so I think there is going to be a big audience that is going to come to Rome to see him, yes, and to travel to see his remains.
Valentina, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your thoughts. Definitely, it's a time of grief, losing a pope, and it's something that is a matter of grief, no matter what faith one is from. And thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast, sharing all your thoughts. I now like to cut across to Jyotsna, my colleague. Jyotsna, you've been picking up a lot of international reactions from world leaders, especially. If you can take us through the reactions that have been coming in.
Absolutely, of course. Italy's of course, Prime Minister has reacted. Giorgia Meloni has said a great man has left us. Of course, we have the Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez, who said he hails Pope Francis' commitment to most vulnerable. Then there's Germany's Merz, who has reacted and said Pope Francis is guided by humility and faith. And it's absolutely shocking, as of course our guests and reporters have told us, that it was, of course, even J.D. Vance. He had just posted a picture at about 6 a.m. local time, IST, about meeting Pope Francis, and suddenly this reaction has come. Shashi Tharoor, an Indian politician, has also reacted, saying a great loss to humanity. Pope Francis was a man of great compassion, a birth of knowledge and depth of experience. So of course we're getting all these reactions. Leader of Conservative Party, MP from Northwest Essex and UK, of course, Kimi Badenoch, has reacted as saying Pope Francis spent his final Easter yesterday bearing witness to the faith he devoted his life to. So so the whole compassion that he has spread, of course, is coming back to him from reactions from world leaders.